Looking for a few good men. That's a phrase that has taken on a whole new meaning in this rise of transgenderism. But there's some good news on the horizon out there. Good news on how transgenderism, especially among youth on college campuses, is falling off. And that is opening the door for some more traditional men with traditional roles, traditional viewpoints, dare I say even Christian, biblically centered, biblically focused viewpoints to emerge. That's the topic of today's Bold and Blunt, and I'm your host, Cheryl Chumley, giving you a Christian conservative look at today's news, politics, culture, and events. The International Council on Men and Boys, it's menandboys.net. That's an organization that tracks all things male, right? They have a hashtag on the front page called Gender Equality for Men, and it really wouldn't have been that long ago that a hashtag like that would have been laughable. But look, men, traditional men in particular, traditional biblically centered men have just fallen out of popularity in America in the last couple decades, I would say. And with growing alarming frequency in the last few years. And coincidentally, there is another class of men that's been rising, and it's called transgenderism, right? The transgender male, the fake male. The male that likes to act like a female, the male that thinks he's a female, or the female that thinks he's a male. However you look at it, there are only two sexes, right? Male and female, and there are biblically defined roles for men and women. That's not to say that one is better than another, and that's not to say that one has more talents or skills or usefulness to society at large than another. It just means that God created male and female. In his image, he created them, but he also gave them separate, distinct roles to fulfill. Thus, the physical differences and the mental differences and the psychological differences between males and females. But Democrats came along and they said, oh, we can't have that. We can't have God in anything, and we certainly can't have a God definition of male and female. We have to create our own, and we could do better than that. And so what they did was they turned around and they elevated this psychological disorder and made it normal, made it appear normal, and more than that, want all of society to recognize it as normal, and it's called transgenderism. And this is why when you see a hashtag gender equality for men, nowadays, it's not so much laughable as it is an interesting read. And before I get into more of this, I want to quickly mention, if you like Bold and Blunt, you may get Bold and Blunt at edify.app, at Real Life Network, that's the faith-based news outreach of Pastor Jack Hibbs's Calvary Chapel, Chino Hills Church in California. Great stuff there. Bold and Blunt among the lineup offered there. You may also get Bold and Blunt at WashingtonTimes.com, where if you get it there, you can subscribe to my 3 times a week newsletter. Just comes out in your email box 3 times a week. I've been saying it's called Bold and Blunt with Cheryl Chumley, but apparently, unbeknownst to me, it's actually been titled The Best of Cheryl Chumley. I know this because if you go to the newsletter page, you don't see Bold and Blunt with Cheryl Chumley on the newsletter page. You see The Best of Cheryl Chumley on the newsletter page. So, not that it makes a big difference, because when you go to the newsletter page, if you're looking for my newsletter, there is still only one Cheryl Chumley. But if you just happen to be in haste looking for Bold and Blunt and you don't see it and you get frustrated and you feel like breaking your computer because you can't find my newsletter to subscribe to, in that case, I'm just quickly mentioning, all along, I've been calling my newsletter Bold and Blunt. turns out it's the best of. The best of Cheryl Chumley. So subscribe to it. All you have to do is enter your email address. It'll be delivered to you Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, right to your email box. And guess what? I am right on this. It doesn't just contain my commentaries that I write at the Washington Times. It does contain my bold and blunt podcasts, whether those podcasts be audio or video or a combination of both, as they have recently. And if you're a subscriber, you know this. If you're not a subscriber, please check it out. You can also get Bold and Blunt wherever podcasts are available, though. That's right. Just go online, do a quick Google search or Bing search or DuckDuckGoose, whatever it's called, search, whatever. Bold and Blunt with Cheryl Chumley, and you'll see all the places you can get my podcasts. So what do we want to read here first? Do we want to read Around the World, Men and Boys Are Lagging in 12 Areas, or do we want to read this report from Manhattan Institute, Why Fewer Young People Are Identifying as Trans? Let's save the good news for a second, right? Let's go with the Around the World on menandboys.net, as I said, the international organization for men and boys, or boys and men, whatever it's called. Anyhow, the website's menandboys.net. Around the world, men and boys are lagging in 12 areas. 12 areas, apparently. They're lagging behind women and girls because, as I said, there are only two sexes here. So, around the world, men and boys are lagging in 12 areas. What are they? Well, you know what? It's a quick read, so I'm just going to name them. Education. Boys underperform in education, according to menandboys.net. Health. Men live 5 years shorter and have triple the suicide rates of women. What's going on there, guys? Why you be killing yourselves? Why don't you take care of your health? Look, we all know this. We all know that in families, right? It's always the guys that never want to go to the doctors. They always want to self-medicate. They always want to stitch themselves up. If they have an arm that got half torn off in a car wreck, they're like, no, I don't want to go to the hospital. Just give me a needle, give me a thread, stat. And they want to sew it up themselves. Well, guess what? You're living 5 years shorter than women. Number 3, boys. What does that mean? Boys. Child labor and hazardous work, child soldiers, extortion, and undernutrition. I guess you're lagging in the area of boys. Boys being boys, right? I guess that's what that means. You guys have to grow up quick around the world. You got to get in those mines and start digging for coal. Start digging for those diamonds. Number 4, false allegations. Men are by and large, right, targeted for false allegations much more than women. Well, you know, kind of a reason for that when you consider the crime of rape, right? I mean, you factor that in, it's a little bit harder sell to claim women mass rape, right, compared to men. So I get that. All right, number 5, victims of violence. Men are lagging behind is being victims of violence. You know, that's kind of a curious thing to put on this list. It would seem a positive in this list of supposed negatives, right? Men, especially boys, face. Oh, okay. They're saying victims of violence hit men more than women. See what I did there? Hit, huh? That was completely by accident. But victims of violence, men, especially boys, face higher homicide and wartime death rates. Sorry, guys, but you're the ones that go to war, you know? All right, okay, so some of these are a little bit obvious, right? It's, what do you want here? What do you want? What are you going to do? All right, 6, parenting. Men face court biases, harsher treatment, and undue child support burdens. Okay, this is an issue. This is an issue that really in America could use some scrutiny, because I think the times have changed enough that we need to revisit the automatic knee-jerk court response to divorce and child custody cases where women are always, always, always believed, and men are put under a light bulb, put under a heat lamp, put under a spotlight of having to prove their innocence. Not saying that women shouldn't be believed, but I am saying that in these court cases, and especially court cases involving children and spousal support, if that's still a thing anymore, but child support, a lot of times men are given unfair treatment. So that is worthy of further scrutiny. Number 7, the criminal system. Men receive harsher treatment at every step of the criminal legal process. Number 8, partner abuse. Men face equal domestic violence. What? More online harassment, but fewer services. Men face equal domestic violence? Okay. This, all right. Who wrote this, right? Attorneys for men in divorce cases. That's a little. I'm just gonna say it. That's BS. That's just ridiculous. Men do not face equal domestic violence. Okay, I think that's not only proven by data and reportings and analysis and studies. It's just it's just common sense. So now I'm sick of this list, so we're just going to leave off the other 4. And we're going to go to Manhattan Institute, a commentary put out October 14th, 2025 by Eric Kaufman. Why are fewer young people identifying as trans? So let's just read a little bit about this. The Foundation for Individual Rights and Expression, FIRE, which conducts a large annual survey of U.S. undergraduates, polled over 60,000 students in 2025. A surprising shift is taking place in the gender and sexual identities of young Americans. The decline of trans and queer identity among young Americans. That report shows that since 2023, both trans and queer identification have dropped sharply within generation. And guess where this drop is seen the most? In elite institutions. Andover Phillips Academy in suburban Boston surveys over 3/4 of its students annually in 2023. 9.2% identified as neither male nor female this year. Remember, October 2025. That number has crashed to just 3%. A similar story emerges at Brown University. 5% of students identified as non-binary in 2022 and 2023. But by 2025, that share had dropped to 2.6%. Isn't that interesting? So, analysis of raw data, let me just finish with this last couple lines here, shows that in that year, in 2025, just 3.6% of respondents in this annual Foundation for Individual Rights and Expression survey of U.S. undergraduates, just 3.6% identified as a gender other than male or female. That's now. By comparison, the figure was 5.2% in 2024 and 6.8% in both 2022 and 2023. Last sentence here. In other words, the share of trans-identified students has effectively halved in just 2 years. Wow, that's pretty significant. Couple more years and the whole transgender movement could very well be abolished. And haven't we all been waiting with bated breath for this? Well, my guest today has some really good information on the emergence of real men, which comes coincidentally at the disappearance of wokeness, right? And as a matter of fact, The title of her book is Real Men Don't Go Woke. Dr. Gilda Carle, I want to thank you so much for being on Bold and Blunt. It is so great to have you here.
Well, thank you. I love the title of your podcast.
Oh, and I was about to say I love the title of your new book. So we're getting along already. Real,
What's in common?
Real Men Don't Go Woke is the title of your book. The other half of it is the book they would not publish, the truth that must be told. So what's going on there? What's your book about? Why did you write it? There's a lot there.
I didn't have a choice. I had to write it. I have been writing, this is my 19th book. I have been writing for women mostly to raise their self-consciousness and raise their self-esteem and feel better about themselves. And one of the books that I had written is called Don't Lie on Your Back for a Guy Who Doesn't Have Yours. And the women were coming to me, and I was a love doc on MTV at the time. The women were coming to me and saying, but I gave him everything and he still dumped me. And I said, that is the problem. I don't think you've learned the lessons. So I was thinking, don't lie on your back for a guy who doesn't have yours. Guys can't have a woman's back because they don't have their own. And so I got into the data, and I started, I couldn't believe it. It was so amazing to hear what is going on with men today, and the suicide rate is 4 times greater than that of women. The testosterone is going down. The Y chromosome that determines a man to be a man is thinning out. Then the loneliness, then the depression, and I had to tell them, men, what was going on. And men and women are both reading this book. And it's when you write a book, you always take a chance. You never know if it's going to hit, if it's not going to hit. And I can't believe the numbers of people, men especially, who are writing to me saying that because of this book, they did not commit suicide. That in itself was mind-blowing for me.
That's amazing.
It's amazing.
Can I just cut in and ask, because I think we're all aware of how that whole toxic masculinity thing has just pushed men into becoming little wussies, right? But you mentioned testosterone levels were going down, and there was a change in chromosomes. So how do these cultural pressures result in biological realities?
Well, men are also getting a push from women. I hate to admit it, you and I are both women, and I love men, and I'm sure you feel the same way. And yet there are so many younger women, the same women, by the way, who would not publish this book because they are in charge of the publishing industry in the big 5 publishers. So they make decisions that say anything that is anti-woke is no good. And so they are pushing men to become more wussy. And that's ridiculous. When they have come to me and said, that word woke in your title, I said, well, then if you don't like that word, change it. Real men don't go voiceless. Real men don't go spineless. You like that better? The point is, rather than argue about etymology, why don't we instead talk about the fact that men are dying and we as a gender are pushing them over the cliff? It's time to stop this.
So what leads men into these higher suicide rates? Is it just sort of living a lie where they have to pretend to be less manly than they are? Is that
okay? You got that. Number 1 is that.
Okay.
They are being called toxic. They don't want to be called toxic, so they're trying to conform. What they are in essence doing, however, is curtailing their emotions. They don't want to be angry. That is significant because they think that is toxic. That's not toxic. Anger is a normal, natural feeling that we get when things are not right, and we are reacting to that. And what I am showing men is that we don't have to react. We can respond. in more positive and communicative ways. What this culture has shown them is that it's okay to be an angry man. Don't be an angry woman because that's really ugly. But you can be an angry man. Thereby, we give birth to the rise of a P. Diddy or a Harvey Weinstein. And we can go on and on and on. So they hold in their emotions. Well, they have a choice. They can either act anger out, which is very destructive. And I start with the Will Smith case that we all watched and saw that he just couldn't contain it anymore. Or they can act anger in. And that makes us sick and fat and very, very incapable of talking. And a lot of men have remained silent. A PhD wrote to me and said, "Thank you so much for speaking up as you are. I cannot. I was fired from my last job." This is a guy with great credentials, and he could not speak up at work. And this is what the people around men are telling them. Don't open your mouth. Don't say another word. And I'm sorry to say that it's especially white men who are walking on eggshells. And I have data to prove that. So we can't continue like this.
So do you in your book define sort of what it means to be a real man, or do you just leave?
I sure do.
Okay, please go ahead with that.
I sure do. Because the beginning of the book talks about how the anti-woke people would not even want to publish a book like this. They don't want the truth being put out there. And then it goes through men's new feelings. They are wounded, banished, shamed, unneeded, and of course, angry. And I go through all the conditions that got us there. And so men try to hide from women and intimacy. How? Oh, some become sex possessed. Some become the gender benders, changing their genders. Some become human dropouts, like the furries that we see all over the news, or opportunists, or credential extenders, and so on and so forth. There are 10 categories. Then I offer solutions for emotional detox. So a guy isn't just hanging there saying, "Okay, now what do I do?" These are real solutions. So another part, the following part is real men who stand up. And those are our role models. From Sylvester Stallone to Johnny Depp to Dr. Peter McCullough, Bill Ackman, Ted Sarandos. I can go on and on and on. I have a lot listed here. But the final one is YOU. Are you meeting what you need to meet for your own personal goals?
I know you said your book is filled with solutions, and I don't want to do any kind of giveaway on it because I'd like people to buy your book. It sounds fascinating. But
well, thank you.
I'm curious, if you looked around the landscape of our nation right now, which I'm sure you have, what are the top mistakes that are being made that push men to be less than men, to be sort of wussified?
Well, I'll give you an example. I was just channel surfing one day, and two college kids were talking. One a boy, one a girl. And the boy was being harassed, chided by friends all around him. Kind of like bullying, but not full force bullying. The woman turns to him and says, "Why don't you stand up for yourself?" And he then in turn says, "When I do, my girlfriend calls me toxic."
Oh, jeez.
This was just something. I didn't know what the movie was called. I didn't see it. Didn't choose to watch anymore. But that said it all. All of their friends are pressuring them not to speak up, to hold it in, hold their emotions in, hold their upset in. And it's going to go away by itself. Oh, really? No, it doesn't. It kills. And that's what I'm cautioning men about. And mothers are thanking me. Fathers are thanking me. I mean, the thanks come from so many different parts of our culture that I had never counted on.
Does the transgender movement, you think, in some respects spring from this? Is it tied?
That's in the book too. I don't miss a thing in the pop culture. And yes, that's very much involved in all of this. Yeah, well, one man from Brussels, because this is an international problem, this is not just in the United States. A man from Brussels said, okay, this is what I know. I am a man. However, I can't stand being called toxic male anymore. I have decided to go binary. And that's what I'm going to do. So that's an answer? This is no better than some of the men I speak to on TikTok, where they say, I'm telling my sons not to get married, not to have children, not to get involved with women anymore. Well, that's not an answer either. Dropping out is one of the parts of this book. That is not an answer. The answer is knowing how to cope well, and how to communicate rather than cancel. And I'm afraid the far left and these crazy women who have been radicalized to hate men and hate life and hate everything about our culture. I am afraid that those people have taken over and decided this is the only way to go. And if you are not complying with their rules, well, too bad. They will cancel you.
What kind of changes would women have to make in a society to have a society where men are allowed to live out their God-given roles?
You know, it's interesting. I laid out the problem. I talked about solutions, but at the end of the book, I say this cannot be done without women making it safer for men to speak their truth without cutting them off, castigating them, castrating them. Let men feel that they are safe to express themselves. That's the role of women. Men cannot do this alone. And I stress this. This is not a male problem alone. This is a male-female problem. And so many older women who are looking for second time around loves are saying they can't find men. And yet, so many young women are saying the exact same thing to me. They can't find guys. They don't mean they can't find guys who look like guys. Or that's an issue too if the guy turns out to be trans. But okay, they're not saying that. They can't find men who are honest and transparent and willing to say, this is who I am, and this is how I feel. Because a woman is left in the dark, even with, do you want to go to a movie tonight, honey? And he says, anything you want. And eventually that wears very thin for women. Oh my God, he can't even make up his mind. Well, he's trying to cope with all of this gender stuff and pressure on him. And he's trying to be complacent in the relationship. And I'm saying that in itself is dangerous.
So let's just finish up with this last question, Gilda, more like a devil's advocate question, because the left would look at, they wouldn't even read your book. They would just look at the title and take offense. And one of their exactly. And one of their arguments would be, no doubt, that you just want to put women back in the kitchen barefoot pregnant in 1940s, 1950s roles, that kind of thing. Could you respond to that?
Not even close. It takes a very strong woman to recognize that she has been the part of the problem in trying to control her man. It takes a very strong woman to say, let me hear what you feel, and I will just be quiet and listen. You know, active listening is a skill that we are not practicing here in this culture. So it takes a very strong woman to do that. And a strong woman is a woman who's determined. She gets to her goals, and she doesn't cut back on who she is. So why would she want her men to cut back on who they are? And for all these women listening, if you have male children, let me caution you. You are setting a standard unless you give your man and the men around you an opportunity to speak transparently.
You know, your book would probably do a lot to reverse divorce trends in America too, I would assume.
Oh, I believe it would. I believe it would. People are buying this. They're saying as Christmas presents, and they're making this so easy to get to the material. And just, it's easy reading. I made the print larger than it usually is in some of these books, so that our older population over 50 who needs readers won't have to strain their eyes. I mean, it's all very simple.
Well, that's me right there, sad to say.
Okay, I'm with you, honey.
But I like that, the larger print. Real men don't go woke. The book they would not publish, the truth that must be told. Dr. Gilda Carle, I want to thank you so much for coming on Bold and Blunt and for writing this book. It sounds fascinating.
God bless you. Thank you so much for all your support. And you have a beautiful speaking voice. I love listening to it.
Oh, well, thank you. See, we're best friends. It's great chatting with you.
Likewise. Have a good day.
You too.
And Happy New Year.
And that's another Bold and Blunt. Remember, if you like Bold and Blunt, you may get Bold and Blunt at edify.app, at Real Life Network, at WashingtonTimes.com, and of course, wherever podcasts are available. Tune in next time. And meanwhile, don't forget, stay blunt, stay bold.